Hey, today we're going to discuss 5 people that were very influential in Americans' history. The first 2 that we're going to talk about is brothers. It's Wilbur and Orville Wright, and we know them for being credited with the first human flight. When they were children, their father gave them a flying toy, and they became fascinated as young children and said, one day we will fly. And so as they got older, they opened a bicycle shop, and on their spare time, they would build gliders. And one day it come to them that they wanted to build a small engine to put on a glider. And so they continued working for many years until they finally developed a small plane. And they went to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina to test this plane. Their first test did not work, the plane crashed. And they went back and worked on their plane, and 2 days later they flew it again, and this time it stayed in the air for 12 seconds. They continued developing their idea, and before too much longer they had developed a plane that could go 25 miles and at speeds up to 40 miles per hour. So without Wilbur and Orville Wright, the United States would have never had planes in World War I, II, and we wouldn't have commercial planes today, so they were very influential.
There's nothing to it. I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky.
The next person we're going to talk about is George Washington Carver. This was an African-American man that was very interested in education. He went to college and even become a professor, and from his research he developed what we now know as crop rotation. Without crop rotation, the land would lose its nutrients and we would not be able to grow and farm. So a lot of people consider him the father of agriculture. Another thing he discovered was the South was having problems with the boll weevil. This boll weevil was an insect that ate cotton. And so he discovered that these boll weevils did not like peanuts. But farmers in the South didn't want to grow peanuts because it was not a profitable crop. So he made new products from peanuts, such as oils, dyes for clothes, and probably the most famous we still have today is peanut butter. And so George Washington Carver influenced America through his agricultural research and developing many new products.
Don't you remember the fizz in a pepper, peanuts in a bottle?
We're now going to discuss Alexander Graham Bell. We all know him as the guy that developed this thing right here, a telephone. The reason he wanted to develop a telephone was because both of his parents were deaf. He was very interested in sound waves. He ended up receiving funding, and he hired an assistant by the name of Thomas Watson. Both of these men put in many hours developing the telephone, and the first message that was sent across the telephone was, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." And this happened back in 1876. The next year, Mr. Watson and Alexander Graham Bell developed a telephone company called the Bell Telephone Company, and we now know that as AT&T. It's still around. So we can credit Alexander Graham Bell with being the father of modern communication today.
Time is on slipping into the future. Time is on slipping, slipping, slipping.
The last person we're going to discuss is Thomas Edison. We know this man as being a famous scientist and inventor. In fact, he invented over 1,000 different inventions. But we're going to focus on one of his most famous, the incandescent light bulb. He was not the first person to invent the light bulb, but he developed the carbon filament that goes inside the light bulb that burns. And so he's credited with making the first practical light bulb that could be used in homes. He also developed the power grid that gets electricity into our homes. So without Thomas Edison, we wouldn't have lights in our house, and we wouldn't have electricity to get in our house as well.
You